everybody, this is James,
Marco,
Nabil,
and Mikey.
And this is the Movie Pals podcast number 178. Today we're going to be reviewing the Beverly Hills Cop franchise, from the first film from 1984 all the way to the new Netflix exclusive film from just recently, 2024. So it's a marathon. We haven't done one in a while. So without further ado, let's jump into the Beverly Hills Cop marathon. All right, so before we start, I know a few of you have never seen Beverly Hills Cop. I guess the films, before the trilogy beforehand, before it was a four movie kind of thing, as of now, right? I'll start with Nabil, though. Nabil, you've watched these before, right?
Oh, yeah. I've watched, especially the first two, I've watched a few times. The third one, I've seen a handful of times. But yeah, I've seen these both in the R-rated version and the very, very trimmed down, clean versions on television.
Yeah, so I've also seen them all. It's been a while since I've seen them, but I've watched them all. I want to say I've seen the first and second one a few times. The third one's always the one, I've seen it more than once probably, but not more than once, probably, or not more than 2 or 3 times maybe. But throughout the years, I've seen them because once again, they also were always on Comedy Central, I think, and stuff like that. I've probably seen the edited TV versions a lot more than the actual uncut versions. But
sure.
Yeah, before we start, then, Nabil, just for you particularly, did you anticipate doing this one again, or was it something like you? Do you like the films overall, or did you think you liked the films?
Well, I know I like the original. I have fond memories of the original ones more so than the third one, because I don't know, like you, I saw him a lot on TV, so I remember watching it a lot. But I also confused it a little bit with his other films, 48 Hours. So I was also anticipating to see...
Those are way different.
They are, and I was trying to remember, especially the first 48 Hours.
You're crazy.
I know we saw those together, I think, too, not too long ago.
We probably did, yeah.
Ago. But I remember getting the first Beverly Hills Cop movie and the first 48 Hours film confused with some of the scenes, and so I was anticipating to see, okay, because it's been a minute, which one is which, so I can get that clear. But yeah.
And it was like, where the hell's Nick Nolte come in, though?
He's like, I know he's in this film.
All right, okay, that's fair. Yeah, I've always liked these. These are the kind of the big films for... Don't get me wrong, Eddie Murphy has a lot of big hits, but these are the ones that I most kind of relate to him outside of his 90% movies, I guess. Yeah, they were. So kind of an action comedy kind of stuff. So Mikey, what about you? I know the first time. So you never saw them ever?
Yeah, I've never seen these movies. I've said it so in the past. I didn't really watch a lot of movies from the 80s and before. So I never really even put this on my scale, or never really even seen any of them. All 3 of them were first time watches for me.
Nice. Okay. Were you looking forward to doing this then, or? Yeah,
I mean, I like Eddie Murphy and the stuff he's done, more recently. So I was looking forward to watching these and having a little bit of laughs and seeing what he did in more of the beginning of his career.
Nice. What about you, Marco? So first time for you as well, right?
That's right. I've never seen these before.
That blows my mind, by the way. I always assume you've seen every 80s film. I've said that several times.
That's really wild that you hadn't seen them.
Every time I come across an 80s franchise or movie that I haven't seen, especially these days, I'm like, that is shocking to me, because I've definitely seen a lot of 80s movies, and I enjoy quite a lot of them, even the ones that haven't aged right. So
yeah, these are quite popular. So this is one of the bigger ones. So
it being Eddie Murphy and all, it was just another one of those franchises that I always kept putting in the back burner and saying, I'll watch it sometime
eventually, right?
Yeah, I get it. I mean, you were in your 40s at the time. Probably was
couldn't relate to him. Yeah, what was he
anymore?
He was 22 in the first one. You're like, I don't know about these young kids anymore.
Guys, I was at Studio 54 popping Quaaludes. So, I just didn't have time for that shit, But
so, were you anticipating it then, doing this little marathon?
I kind of was, specifically for Eddie Murphy. He's always had bangers in his early years with this and Trading Places, 48 Hours, which actually is another franchise I haven't seen yet. Well, I think there's only 2 of them, but still, I haven't seen those either.
It's just 48 Hours and another 48 Hours. Truthfully, I don't think the sequel's that good, but the first one's really good.
The first one's
I've seen very few of Eddie Murphy's 80s stuff and more along his 90s, 2000s, because that's what I grew up with.
Makes sense. All right, so let's jump into the movies then. We are going to do overall spoilers, just so everybody knows, just because I think it's easier to talk about, especially in a marathon setting. So, unfortunately, if you want to know, I don't truthfully feel like there's a lot to spoil for any of these movies. Truth be told, there's no twist that you can't see like a million miles away. So,
Very simple plots.
yeah, pretty simple. So, let's jump into the first film, Beverly Hills Cop.
What were you doing in California anyway?
I was working.
Working where?
Beverly Hills.
Axel!
Hey, Mikey.
Oh, you don't mind if I ask around a little bit, do you?
Don't do a damn thing. Stay out of this.
You know, this is the cleanest and nicest police car I've ever been in my life. This thing's nicer than my apartment.
I just got off the phone with Inspector Todd in Detroit. He says if you're out here investigating the Tandino murder,
How you doing?
you needn't bother coming back.
So, Beverly Hills Cop, released in 1984, is sitting at 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. A freewheeling Detroit cop pursuing a murder investigation finds himself dealing with the very different culture of Beverly Hills. That's very basic. Almost too basic. Okay. This is directed by Martin Brest, who also went off to do Midnight Run in 1988, Son of a Woman in 1992, and Meet Joe Black in 1998. And his last film was Geely in 2003, the Ben Affleck J-Lo absolute train wreck of a movie. So bad that he stopped directing movies afterwards, apparently. This is written by Daniel Petrie Jr., who also wrote Turner and Hooch in 1989, Toy Soldiers in 1981, and In the Army Now, a favorite of mine, from 1994. This released on December 5th, 1984 in theaters with a budget of $13 million. It made $234 million in the box office. So, huge success. This stars Eddie Murphy as Detective Axel Foley, Judge Reinhold as Detective William Billy Rosewood, John Ashton as Sergeant John Taggart, Lisa Elbacher as Jenny Summers, Stephen Burkhoff as Victor Maitland, Ronnie Cox as Lieutenant Andrew Bogomil, Paul Reiser as Jeffrey Friedman, Bronson Pinchon as Serge, Jonathan Banks as Zach, and Gilbert R. Hill as Inspector Douglas Todd. So I'll start with you, Mikey. What did you think about the movie briefly, and did you like it or not?
Yeah, I mean, Murphy really carries this movie on his back. I mean, he just tosses the whole thing up there and is like super charismatic. He just shines as Foley, and you can really see it. It's really nice to see. Actually, you can tell it just like comes natural to him. Like it's just like his natural persona is like coming through the character.
Yeah.
And while the storyline we already mentioned here, it's pretty simple and straightforward, but they don't need to have anything more, in my opinion. The movie overall, I liked it. I thought it was a really good movie.
Nice. What about you, Marco?
I agree with what Mikey said. Murphy is fire in this. It's Murphy at his best. He is the star. He is the whole fucking movie. Every time he's on screen, you're just waiting to see like what is Axel Foley gonna do in this scene. At least for me, especially not seeing the movie before. Whenever he's going on a long rant, which primarily were improvised, it's just fucking hilarious because it feels and sounds like gibberish, but it makes sense and it's hilarious, and you can't help but die of laughter as he's essentially like he's conning everyone, and he's not afraid to con, the police, the criminals, anyone, just to get, his mission done, especially because it's a mission that's very personal and close to his heart because his buddy gets pretty much gunned down in front of him. And it just keeps you entertained the entire time.
Pretty random that it was Mike from fucking
Right.
Mike,
he's like, where's Walter? Where is he?
I was like, man, this guy was old back in 1984. God damn.
Right?
So, kind of funny. Cool. What about you, Nabil?
Yeah, I thought the film very thin plot, but Eddie Murphy is everything in this movie. I have to imagine he did a lot of improvisation and like just riffed a lot of the lines, just did a bunch of different takes because you could tell that he was having a lot of fun with it. And I'm surprised a lot of the people in the cast were able to keep a straight face. But the story itself, an interesting premise. I think the way they lead to him going from Detroit to Beverly Hills is, while far-fetched, is pretty, I guess, realistic. And the interactions with the cops, I know, it makes no sense. The interactions with the Beverly Hills cops, I like that dynamic with him and how he would be interacting with the different police department and how they were going about things. It seemed to ground it more, while his character, of course, is just a wild, brash person who's trying to just solve a friend's murder. So it's a thin but very entertaining plot, and Murphy does it all.
Yeah, no, I like this movie. This is brought back a lot of nostalgia, I think, for me, especially rewatching this. And by the way, we saw all of them have been released now in 4K, so technically the best they've ever looked. It's not the greatest 4K look, but worked for me for the most part.
It looks
but,
good.
Yeah,
for what it is.
I really liked, like you guys said, Eddie Murphy is a standout here. I like his interactions too with Rosewood and Taggart. It's a very like unexpected friendship that happens between all three of them, which at first, because when you see it, it's almost one of those things where you're already assuming like, oh, Taggart must be like the racist cop and he's going to be the dude that's an asshole to him the whole time. But it works for some reason, all three of them. They really balance each other out. And I really like how that even evolves into the other films later on in the line. It's a very unexpected triangle of friendship, I guess. So there's not even that much action, truth be told. It's more comedy in this one. And the comedy works, though. So plot-wise, I'll start with you then, Nabil, with the plot. You said it was pretty brief. Did you like where it goes with the plot, or was it something that you want a little more of, or did it just work for what this film is kind of setting up?
I think it's exactly what you said. It's really the characters that make everything here. So, like, the plot was just the medium to get them to where they were going. But the actual important part of the story that keeps everything interesting is how the dynamic between Foley and Taggart, and even like the lieutenant Bogomil, him being the hard ass, and then still
turning out to be a good person. By the way,
still kind of a good guy, right?
Yeah.
So I think all that really helps drive things forward. So every time Foley did something that was kind of, bending the book a bit and was kind of being reprimanded throughout, they still were willing to help him kind of push along or be stern on him, and that helped move the plot forward. Because if you really took away the elements of the relationship he had with the actual police officers that he was working with, the other detectives, the plot would have been done pretty quickly. He could have been this hard-nosed, cop from Detroit. He's just trying to solve the murder, and he's jumping through these different things, and then we get to the end. Quick, I don't even like an hour film, really. Got you right there. But that adds the extra layer and keeps it interesting, and it isn't just being brushed off as like, oh, that Foley, we hate him, but he's got a heart of gold. Like, no, he actually means something. Because a lot of those films in the 80s were like that, right? Like the hard-nosed the detective who is going to do everything he can to solve his crime, but that's not exactly what's happening here. He's trying to have the cops come along with him as best as he can. They're just
he actually tries to help them out too, and especially like the strip club scene where he's like, this place is about to get robbed, and
there's a reason behind everything he's doing, for sure. Even though it seems a bit far-fetched, like there is purpose towards it. So I think from that aspect, that helps the plot keep it interesting, even though like the general overall path of it's very thin.
Any thoughts on that, Marco?
Coming from it with fresh and new eyes, I never even knew that he was a Detroit cop going to Beverly Hills. I always just thought he was a Beverly Hills cop. And it just
outside, you're like, he must be the new guy that's gotten the force, and he doesn't fit in well with them.
I was wondering where it was going. I was like, is he from Beverly Hills and he joins the Detroit Police Department and he's just a wild card, or vice versa? Does he get transferred to Beverly Hills because he's a wild card and shit unravels? But the plot itself is just, it's ridiculous that his friend gets murdered and he goes out and is technically not even on active duty when he goes to investigate. So that was new to me, and I kind of liked that. It was a bit surprising that was the plot, given what little I knew about this. I think that the whole look and aspect of Beverly Hills, it's sort of like poking fun of that area, California, SoCal, like that. The production team actually didn't even get help from the Beverly Hills police station, so the director and the writers made the station look like these guys were basically just security guards for the rich and famous around there and nothing more. And I think that translated so well into the story and made it that much more funny. I think the most hilarious thing of the plot is that the Beverly Hills cops, like, they're supposed to be doing things by the book and super clean. And I think that is one of the most hilarious things ever, because it's totally not true about Beverly Hills. Foley is this wildcat that goes in there and shows them, well, this is another way to do it. I bring a little bit of street smarts and I bring a little bit of my own experience to help you guys kind of do your job better. I kind of found that interesting, and it was not what I expected. So I enjoyed that.
Nice. Looking into the characters themselves, Mikey, any thoughts on? So you talked about Axel, but what outside of the comedy aspect of it all, what else works for Axel Foley for you?
He just has a way to kind of use his observations of what's going on around him in his advantage, and also his like personality. He has like this outrageous commentary that he does to kind of throw people off their game. He like flips a badge out and shows it to somebody, and he says he's an inspector, or hey, whatever the case may be in this stuff. But he uses all this stuff to kind of throw people off their game, and it shows that he's very observant on what's going on around him. He's very intelligent. He knows how to kind of just use that to his advantage. And I wasn't expecting that aspect from this character, because you see Eddie Murphy and you think of a comedian, and he is using comedy in a way, but I didn't think that they would actually portray him as like a really like seasoned detective and an intelligent, observant person. And it's not anything that is bad or anything like that, but I just thought they wouldn't kind of show that aspect around in the movie. Then they really went into it. They used it multiple times where he knew why the coffee was there, and there was just like small little details that kind of just fleshed out his seasoned professionalism that he had. So I like that they didn't just show that he's a kind of a wild card, but he's also a pretty good detective as well.
Yeah. What about Mikey, his relationship with, or what do you think of the two cops that are supposed to be telling him the whole time, Billy Rosewood and John Taggart?
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of scenes together where they're just like kind of along for the ride at the beginning, and then over time they kind of just build like this buddy relationship, and by the end of the movie they're like kind of warming up to him, kind of. Even the lieutenant in some way is kind of taking on a little bit of what he's kind of bringing to the table. But some of the interactions were absolutely hilarious. The banana in the tailpipe where he's ordering them like room service. Yeah. And you already mentioned the strip club. And when he go into the lieutenant and he's like explaining everything that's happened, he's like, yeah, they figured it all out. It was crazy. I didn't do anything. And then, they're like, they say the truth, and he's just like, man, that was working. Like, what were you guys doing?
Like, work with me.
So it just really shows that everything that.
Yeah, the banana in the tailpipe, that's been something ever since I was a kid. I was like, I didn't know you could do that. So what about the villain there, Marco? Victor Maitland. What did you think about him?
He was your average 80s villain.
I would say he's pretty forgettable, but
he is. He's I don't know. It feels like a lot of the 80s movies and maybe some of the early 90s movies had this villain with dual identities, where he was like an art dealer, or he was a famous person, or a person with power, and he was villainous, which is not far from the truth. But I feel like they used that trope like a little too much. So it wasn't surprising that when they showed like this guy in the art dealership or whatever the fuck he did, it was like, he's obviously the villain.
Oh, 100%. He in the 80s he is the main bad guy. I don't know, guys, if you remember from Octopussy. He's General Orlov, and then in Rambo First Blood Part 2, he's Lieutenant Colonel Podolsky. So
that's right. That's where I saw him from.
He was a big 80s actor. So,
but I do like how Foley kept trying to get under his skin every time, and it just completely pisses him off, or his goons.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's specifically Jonathan Banks. How you know that he wanted to get his revenge on that guy, so he just kept like antagonizing him. So kind of like that.
I think that scene is hilarious when they just throw him out the fucking window.
Yeah,
and it's just so casual. I'm like, dude, who would do that? So over the top. And he's like, damn. He just gets something like, they threw me out of a window.
They're even arresting him for it. And he's like, what? How am I getting arrested for being thrown out of a window? And it's just so crazy.
Probably one of the most realistic scenes there. I like how Foley kind of shows like the racism within like the department as well too. Like he's not afraid to point it out. He's like, is it because of black?
Yeah, he even does that at the hotel too. He's like, you don't serve black people here or something? Yeah. I was like, oh shit. So Nabil, any other characters you want to talk about?
We'll talk about the only, I guess, female character here, Jenny Summers. Lisa Albuquerque's character. I liked what they did with her character. Well, I like what they did with her character, that she's not just like some love interest. she's actually just his friend. And
Yeah, because technically, in the first two films, Axel Foley was married. So
right, technically,
yeah, his wife from these two is the reason why he has a daughter in the fourth movie.
So she's not a love interest, and then also she's there helping him with the plot, but also is willing to kind of protect him or help him in the sense. I don't know.
Once again, so random. She's like, I grew up with them on the same street. I was like, I'm Detroit too, really? Okay, that I guess, sure,
So that was a nice little change, and especially again, 80s style films. That was against the norm of what they were doing over there. So it's nice, and I also like Sergey. Nobody knows
Sergey. Hilarious comedic relief kind of guy.
Bronson Pinchot
shows up in 2 more movies, strangely enough. So
he was funny. I liked the dynamic between them. It was an 80s trope, and he was maybe gay. We don't really know, but I think he was playing for somebody very affluent, and it was a good interaction. And the constant catchphrase to continue on. It's like, get the fuck out of here. He's like, I will not. Just that's still funny. Even listening to it now, I was like, that's so funny. Yeah. So I think just some of the side character actors were really, really fun. And again, it gave room for Eddie Murphy to riff off of them and find something that worked and kept it entertaining, even when the plot could have just let's move on to the next thing. Gave it a little bit of room to play around.
2 characters I'll bring up. Paul Reiser is just in every 80s film too. So he decided to show up in this franchise.
He's like, why not?
He's like, sure, I'll be one of the guys that is his connection to Detroit too in a way. But I like Gilbert R. Hill, who is Inspector Douglas Todd, who is Axel Foley's actual boss in Detroit. He's very much like a stereotypical motherfucker, just cursing every other word. It's like the F word. I thought it was hilarious.
He keeps telling him to shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
He looks like his blood pressure's just out of the fucking roof, dude. Every time he's just talking, but hilarious. Who also shows up for the original 3, so which is pretty cool.
Fun fact: he's actually a real police officer too.
He was actually from Detroit, by the way, and almost won the mayoral election back in like 2010 or something like that. He was pretty close.
Wow.
But, okay, so did you guys think? I'll leave this one open for you guys. That the comedy, we talked about the comedy. Is anything dated with the comedy, or does it pretty much hold up?
I don't think he made any references. There was a couple of gay jokes, but it wasn't like anything that I felt was too overt. I didn't feel there's a lot of sexist jokes. Like the comedy stayed, even though it's of its time, stayed pretty, in my opinion, tame compared to what you've seen some of those other 80 films where like, oh, can't say that anymore. Like I didn't really hear anything that when we were watching this film that made me feel like this doesn't really hold up.
I agree. I was kind of shocked. I was like, wow, most of the jokes here pretty much hold up. There's not a lot that would kind of get red flagged or anything these days.
I think it's because mainly a lot of his jokes were kind of geared towards himself. Like when he makes the black comments, he's really saying like it's on me, right? He's not saying anything else. Like everything is for the people around him. It's not really saying, hey, you are this, you are that. It's just like, hey, I'm this or I'm that. So it kind of doesn't really seem too bad compared to what we've seen in some other movies around this era.
A lot of it's reactionary too. Like he's basically trying to con these people and stuff, and it's the reaction and the look on their faces that it's hilarious because they're just like, should I believe this guy or should I not? And others are just looking at him like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And it just works so well.
I like when like Jenny, for instance, this is a little thing. She's like, remember when you were driving that beat up old Nova? What are you driving now? It's like, an old Nova. He's like, I'm still driving. I'm like, he really drove all the way from Detroit to Beverly Hills.
In
like,
2 days too. He's like, hey, no sleep.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's a lot of. And I even like the stuff between like Rosewood and Taggart, where he's, and it's kind of something to keep going on. Rosewood just brings up like facts that he knows. He's like, most people don't make it because they eat a lot of red meat, and Taggart's getting just fucking hella annoyed at one point. He's like, why do you keep bringing this up? And then Rosewood's like, well, you eat a lot of red meat, so it's just like stupid shit, You've been drinking a lot of coffee? Stuff like that. I think that's in the second film. But what did you guys think about overall the action? I know there's not a lot. Did it work for you guys?
I think the ending was good up until like the ending where I was like, oh, okay.
That's pretty abruptly.
Yeah, it just kind of stops. And then there's a couple of action scenes in between. we'll probably talk a little bit more about scenes, but I really like the opening scene. That car chase was really fun.
Where he's in Detroit, where he's selling the cigarettes or buying the cigarettes from the guy. Yeah,
that was a really fun scene. That really got me into the film as I started watching. I was like, oh yeah, this is great. I forgot about this. So the scenes that are action laid are quite entertaining. But again, that last part, as good as it was, it really did end abruptly.
I mean, I don't know how I feel about like the bad guys having automatic weapons and spraying bullets everywhere, and not a single.
It's the 80s, Mikey.
Yeah. And I understand that's like kind of a thing, but like that's just a problem with all 80s movies.
You see Commando?
Yeah.
Or Cobra?
Yeah. No one came to shoot like stormtroopers.
That's a trope in the 80s, dude. They don't fucking switch.
No one reloads. No one
reloads or anything. I think Axel's the later ones they start to.
Infinite ammo, apparently. So,
dude, he has just that one gun, and I'm like, where are the clips? It just never runs out of ammo. He just has that one handgun.
It's got 422 rounds in it. You don't have
a quick reload. He just sticks it in real quick. Puts it back.
But yeah, I think the action towards the end, it happens pretty quick, and it's sort of it's
pretty forgettable in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a bit anticlimactic. Like you'd think you'd have a bigger fight with the dude who killed his boy, but it's just over quick. He just freaking unloads on him, and that's it.
That's kind of like a trend all these movies follow, to tell you the truth. So
kinda. I feel like in the other movies they extend it a little bit more, and it's a little bit more like I guess exciting.
I gotcha. So I just want to talk about any scenes that you guys thought favorite parts or worst parts. Just bring it up, Nabil.
Yeah, again, my favorite part was the car chase scene at the beginning where Foley's just acting like I guess he's smuggling in cigarettes, and he's dealing up with these guys, and it's just hilarious to see try to rift off with the guys and trying to get more money out of it because he's trying to make this make it look as legitimate as possible, and then suddenly some real cops show up and they're all just kind of in a real rush to go after him and run off, and just destroys half of freaking downtown Detroit and all these cars, and like it sets you up for everything else he does in the film, because he literally anytime he's in a chase scene or he's after something, just so much collateral damage. Like there's no way he could stay as a police officer. Like he's in jail. Because of all the damages he'd have to pay for that shit. So
that's the funny part of Bill is he's a hyperbolic character, and that is like the most hilarious thing of it all. And it's just like, Jesus, dude.
Yeah. So I love that because it just shows the ridiculously of it all. And I'm like, okay, you're setting the tone for this. I get where we're going with this now.
I like the hotel scene where he's impersonating a Rolling Stone reporter.
For Michael Jackson. Michael calls, tell him.
And he fucking charges everything to the police department too. He's like, just put it on their freaking tab.
It's funny because at the time he was really good friends with Michael Jackson too.
He was, yeah.
Yep.
Anything for you, Mikey?
I mentioned the whole lie about the strip club. I really like that scene afterwards when they're done with the whole heist stopping kind of thing. I also like the scene where he's in like a customs, these package. He's already tricked them into thinking he's like a inspector of some sort.
And he gave me a match.
There's one guy in the room that's like questioning everything, and he's like, "Hey, do you know who I am?" Like, and it's just off the wall because you can tell a lot of it's ad libbed, and he's just having fun with it, and everybody else is like, "Hey, dude, calm down, man, calm down. We're gonna get in trouble," and he just kind of flips it on the guy. I thought it was really just interesting how he did that.
I like when he's talking, when the other detectives are with him, and one of them is like, "We're not going to fall that banana in the tailpipe thing." And then he mocks him. He's like, "We're not going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe." He's like, "Gotta be more natural, man. It should flow out." I was like, damn, he made 5 of them right to his face. All right, guys. What would you rate this? And I'm pretty sure we recommend, but what would your rating be? Start with you, Mikey.
I give it 3.5. It's a definite recommend for me. I like
nice. What about you, Nabil?
I give this 4 stars. It's really fun and worth a watch.
Nice. Marco?
I give this one 3.5 stars also. Fun watch.
Yep. I also gave it 3.5 as well. I think it's a solid comedy action film from the 80s and a really good jumping off point for Eddie Murphy.
Okay, so now on to Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Axel Foley is back.
Who is he?
I'd say he's a cop.
This is a Detroit badge. What the hell are you doing in Beverly Hills?
I'm going deep undercover.
Back where he doesn't belong.
Excuse me, we're the owners of this house. They're in Hawaii for a week while the construction's happening.
I'm Axel Foley, Beverly Hills Building Inspector.
You've stolen this house.
How do you steal a house? It's my uncle's house.
This movie was done in 1987. It is currently sitting at a 48% on Rotten Tomatoes. Axel Foley returns to Beverly Hills to help Taggart and Rosewood investigate Chief Bogomil's near-fatal shooting and a series of alphabet crimes associated with it. This one's directed by Tony Scott, who also did Top Gun in 86, Days of Thunder in 90, True Romance in 93, and Crimson Tide in 95. This one was written...
What a director, by the way. I gotta say.
Yeah,
God damn.
Great movies. Yeah, this one's written by Larry Ferguson, which did Highlander in 86, The Hunt for Red October in 90, Alien 3 in 92, and also Warren Scarron, who did Beetlejuice in 88 and Batman in 89. This one released in May 20th of 1987 in theaters, had a budget of $27 million and a box office of $299.97 million. This has all the cast, or most of the cast, from the previous film, and the new characters are Jørgen Prochnow, who plays Maxwell Dent, and Bridget Nielsen, who plays Carla Fry. So let's go around and see your guys' thoughts on the film. Did you guys like this film or no? And we'll start with Marco.
I really like this one. I feel like it took everything from the first film and dialed it up a few notches. I think Eddie Murphy, again, is pretty much fire on here. Even though he does some of the same jokes and tropes from the previous movie, they seem to have like a fresh flair to him, and he feels a little bit more on point with these jokes. I just thinking about him make me laugh. His stupid alias that he comes up with, Johnny Wishbone. It's just so fucking stupid, but it makes me laugh every time I think about it. The plot, again, very stupid and very simple, but it works. It's your basic 80s action throw movie. There's a little bit of mystery to it because we're trying to figure out who this alphabet killer is, but it works. I liked it.
All right, and James?
I actually really like this one too, to tell you the truth. I had a lot of fun with this one. I know it's not as highly, critical rating wise as the first one, but I actually really like this movie. I thought it was really funny. The action is really amped up in this one too, and I think it features much better villains overall compared to the first film.
Yeah, and Nabil?
Yeah, if you couldn't tell by who directed the film and wrote the film, this takes the grittiness of whatever the first film was probably at a 6 to like an 8 or a 9, because it gets much heavier. It's still funny and it still retains that charm of the original film in a lot of ways, but with the fact that their lieutenant gets gunned down and there's this like ongoing murder mystery going on with these alphabet crimes, and like James was saying with the villains, they're much darker villains, more nefarious, more even 80s-esque than the previous film. Like it sticks with that grittiness, and I think it does it a favor. Though I will say that it takes a little bit of time to draw out some of the inner goings of what's happening in the criminal world and how they're connecting it. So not as much action, but the action that is there is intense.
Yeah, and I kind of echo what you guys are saying. They did copy a lot of the elements that were used from the first film, but they also added a little bit of more flair to some of them. Some of the character progression was, taken a little bit notch up now that we know the characters a little bit more. I did think the story was a little better in this one as well, but the pacing did slow down a little bit because of that. Nabil was saying it took a little time to kind of unfold a little bit. But let's talk about the plot a little bit. Nabil, did you have anything that stand out to you, or what do you think about the plot there?
Yeah, I think that I like the premise of it is Foley's coming back to Beverly Hills because the lieutenant got shot down, and he's trying to help solve the what happened and what he was uncovering. They introduced the lieutenant's daughter for a little bit, which again, it's just a female character there. Nothing wrong with that. It's just not a love interest or anything. She's just helping out. You get a couple scenes with her, and then she's just kind of nothing. So I don't even remember what happened to her really to the end. But
she's just crying the whole time. Nibble's like,
yeah, she's like, my dad's gonna be okay. So just take whatever you need, and that's really what she's there for. But I will say that the way that they go about this plot, like I said, there's a lot of building up of like trying to say, okay, these guys are the real deal. There's a great scene at the beginning though where they're robbing a jewelry store. Like that scene is really fun to see that they're precise, they're experts, they know what they're doing, and they kind of continue on that pattern throughout the film. But you get so few of those that it does feel like we're taking a lot of time to just see, well, what else are they working on? When are they going to deliver this next letter? Like, what's even the purpose of the alphabet thing? Like, they don't really even explain that out. So it's just like a nothing to help move the plot, I guess, around. And so that seemed to me like draw it back a bit. But when we did get to see them actually see how violent they were with no regard for anything, just shooting down people to get what they needed to, that made the villains kind of stand out there too. So the plot again was like, it was okay, but the elements that worked really did work well. And I think that has to do with like the fact that like Tony Scott is a big action director and knew how to handle those scenes and really bring them to life when they showed the screen.
Yeah, and that covers the plot pretty well. Marco, did you have anything about the returning characters that you liked?
Again, Eddie Murphy, dude. Freaking standout. I like his loyalty to the friends he made from the previous movie. Obviously, when he hears about Bogomol's, near fatal shooting, he immediately drops everything what he's doing. He's like, I got to go see what's going on. Obviously, at this point, he's already pissed off his captain yet again. So it all falls in the right place for him to go do that. But he, again, shines when he's riffing, when he's improvising, and when he shows up to, like, one of the villain's locations, like I think it's his like shooting range, and he has like the bag of vitamins that he grabbed, and he's like telling they're like freaking plutonium bullets that are gonna explode, and he's trying to hand it off to the chick. He's like, "What about my daughters, Monique and Unique? What about that? What am I gonna do with that?" It's just so freaking stupid and hilarious, and again, he shines in this, and I love it. Judge Reinhold, I think, is much better in this movie than the first one. They do this whole freaking joke with Rosewood being like a little more than meets the eye. Like he's kind of like got issues, and they keep mentioning it throughout the movie. Like he has like weird animals as pets. He's got all these freaking guns in his house. He keeps saying all this fucking dark shit, and they're just like, dude, we're gonna have to talk to you about that.
Are you good, man?
And so I kind of like how they filled his character out a little bit more. I do like how Taggart is going through a divorce also, and he's just like, stop mentioning it. I'm just gonna come back, and everyone's telling him like, nah, dude, it's over. But I feel like they give enough light to both Axel and also the side characters enough to make the movie work.
Yeah, they did little things for all the characters, I think. Even Foley, like they start mentioning like his before he was a cop, right? He's like knew how to pick locks and that kind of stuff. And for Taggart and Billy, they really kind of just do small things there, but it moves them across pretty well, and it helps out with their relationship later on as they go through too.
Mm-hmm.
James, you kind of mentioned villains when you were going over the you're just a little synopsis here. How do you feel about the villains? Do you have anything more to say about them?
Yeah, I mean, once again, they're pretty 80s villains, right, for the most part. But Jürgen Prochnow is, he's like this German actor that I know mostly from Das Boot. That's like his biggest film, I think. But he's been in other things like Dune, and I think he's the bad guy in Air Force One. He's just a really good villain. He's got the face for it too. I don't know if you guys like if you get that. Like he's got the look. He just you can see him on the screen, and you immediately know. Like he's the bad guy, right? Like immediately, as soon as he shows up, you're like, "Oh, he's the bad guy." Like, there's no other person in this room that's the main bad guy. There's nothing up with that, right? And then with Bridget Nielsen's character of Carla, as Eddie Murphy's character calls her out, he's like, "That's a big bitch," right? So
he keeps saying it too.
She's also like an 80s person, man. She was in Cobra, fucking
wife, right?
Rocky 4. Yeah, she was married to Stallone for a couple of years. So, she's also in there, but she was married to Stallone for like 3 or 4 years, I think. So, and she's just like this menacing person. She's this tall, European-esque. Doesn't say much, but she's just killing people. I really like that first opening scene where you see the robbery happen, and it's just quick. It's very Tony Scott like the action of it all. It reminded me of a lot of his movies where it's just really gritty. The whole look of the whole film has this kind of Tony Scott stamp to it all. I think overall they were much just like a fun kind of villain. Even like when they go to the Playboy Mansion and they're there, and even Hugh Hefner doesn't even know who the fuck Maxwell and Carla are. They're like, who are you guys too? Like he's like, he's like, you guys can all leave basically, because he even calls them out. He's like, I don't even know who you guys are. I'm like, what the hell are you guys doing here? So it worked for me though. I thought they were once again not the strongest villains, but better than the first movie in my opinion. So.
Also, just to kind of touch on it, you mentioned that he has the look for it. I actually thought the one in the first from Burkoff, he actually looks like a villain too.
Oh, all the bad guys have the look.
Presence of it, right? And he just looked really good too.
And one thing I do want to bring up, Judge Reinhold, right? When I was a kid, I only knew him from one movie before I watched all these films, and that was the Santa Claus. I don't know if you guys remember that one. He's the stepdad. I always remember him from that movie first. So when I saw this afterwards, I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So.
I only know him from the very shitty 80s movie with Fred Savage called Vice Versa.
I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, neither way.
Yeah, they swap places. It's like a, it's like a Freaky Friday, but one of the originals.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Cool.
Well, you guys have mentioned there's a little bit more action in this one. So did that work for you? What about that, Nabil?
Yeah, I mean, like James said, the action scenes are very Tony Scott-esque. Like of what we were watching in this film, you could have any other director go in and plot out the plot of this film and go from A to B, and it'd be fine. It'd be in any other 80s film. And Eddie Murphy would do his thing and make sure the film, stays true to action comedy. But with Tony Scott in it, and then even Larry Ferguson adding in a little bit more in his writing as well, you get such when you're in the action, when you're into car chases, when you're in the heist that they're doing, the tone just changes. Like it gets into that kind of Cobra vibe where it's just dark and things are going to happen. There's a lot of tension. Like and this is again action comedy, so you want to feel the levity, but in those scenes, it's all eyes on it, and you're just wanting to. He's got the clock when Carla Fry's going through it, and she's just counting down over there and getting the tension build up, where everybody's trying to get out as soon as possible. Like all that worked so well, way better than the last film. Like the last film had good action scenes, but this one, it just worked so much better.
Did you know that originally the first cut of this film, there was very little comedy to the movie? It was actually just a straight action film. Tony Scott filmed it that way.
I believe that.
He actually had to go back and add additional scenes to add comedy to it. So that's why a lot of the comedy at times seems a little bit random, because they had to reshoot some scenes. And this was kind of the start of Eddie Murphy's diva era as well. He was apparently notoriously like showing up late to set all the time, but apparently he and Tony Scott got along really well. So
well, Nabil, you mentioned earlier that the movie was a little bit more gritty. Marco, do you have anything to kind of talk about how like it looked a little different than the first film, and in any visual things that you liked?
I like that it was a bit grittier. It fit a little bit better for this style of movie. I liked what Tony Scott brought to it, and kind of like what Nabil was saying, that these criminals were hyper violent. Like they weren't afraid to kill anybody. If anything, I was surprised they showed restraint at some of the heists. Like they didn't always kill someone at every heist, but the fact that, they were packing like high-powered machine guns, and they were just a very tight-knit unit that just knew what the fuck they were doing for this plot. It worked. They shot Bogomil like in broad daylight, basically like tricked him with like a car that's stuck on the road, and then all of a sudden someone pulls up and just freaking blasts them straight out of like RoboCop too. Like you see like the blood splatter and everything. I was like, Jesus Christ, dude!
Squibs everywhere.
Like
that's funny, because technically the lieutenant was supposed to have more parts in this movie. By the way, it's just a little background for everybody. Ronnie Cox, but he was in RoboCop at the time, so he was filming that. So a lot of his scenes were actually cut from this movie because he could not come, because they were doing reshoots a lot, and he couldn't come back for it. So
I think, do we only see him at the beginning? I'm trying to remember. We see him at the very end as well.
He's at the end
as well, right? Yeah. So
he shows up.
That's really it. It's like a bookend. He's in there at the beginning, and then at the end, you don't even see it. It's his daughter that fills in that space in the middle.
I'll say this much too: the visual of the movie, it has like a tint of orange to the whole film. I don't know if you guys noticed that or not. That's like a Tony. It looks just
Tony
like
Scott special.
It looks like Days of Thunder, so heavy. There's even a scene in the beginning where Axel's sitting in that office, and it's just there's very little light. There's just a lot of shadows and stuff. It's just dark.
It looks like smoke in the air everywhere too.
I think it's like Top Gun. Like exactly.
Going back to Bogomil, though, Ronnie Cox said that these movies kind of got him out of like the nice guy sort of image that he had, where he always played like these nice dads and stuff. And it's how he got his role in RoboCop too. And it helped him like kind of expand his career, I guess, as a bad guy, not just a good guy. But yeah, Mikey, the hyperviolence worked for this. I mean, they even have a shootout at the strip club this time. They go back to the strip club. It's actually a pretty funny scene that ends up, turning violent because there's like a drive-by or something towards the end. And it just made the movie a little bit more exciting, even though the pace was a little slower in this one. It's still like when the violence and when the shooting happened, it was like kind of in your face, and it worked.
Yeah, I remember there was that one scene where the guy like kind of messes up because he uses the bullets from the actual club that they're, the shooting range that we talked about beforehand. Yep. He used like the wrong bullets, like custom bullets only they make, and he's like, you made a mistake, and they just like kill him on the spot. Like just those kind of things throughout the whole movie. While it is slower, those kind of things kind of keep you invested in the movie. It kind of keeps your attention a little bit. So I think it works as well. James, you mentioned that they added the comedy afterwards, a little bit more afterwards here. Do you think that worked, or what was your thoughts on the comedy?
Yeah, I think it's really over the top, especially the Rosewood quotes and stuff. But for me, it worked. I thought it balanced it out really well. I'm glad that they actually went back and added more comedy to it, because I still think it would have worked even more as a action film. But with this franchise, it's Eddie Murphy, obviously, so it has to have that comedy. And I think for the most part, like I said, it works out pretty well. It balances out, even though I think the comedy in this is probably one of the funnier ones out of them. And at times it does seem a little, the whole, it's all pretty kind of ridiculous, but I think it was really funny.
Well, let's go around and see if you had like a favorite scene, or maybe a least favorite scene. And we'll go around the room, see what everybody's scenes are. Nabil, you want to start us off?
Yeah, again, I like the heist scenes, but I will say too, and this is a staple for like we kind of mentioned it in the last review of the Beverly Hills Cops film, but all the endings of the villains of what happens to them, it's very abrupt, and then it's a trope of like we get the last big fight scene at the end is a big shootout, everybody's going crazy, machine guns everywhere, just wild shit's happening, and then when they finally get to Maxwell and shoot him down, it's just single shot, done, and that's how they end. Like all these,
like nothing.
Yeah, it's just funny to see how like you go all this build up in all these films, and we'll see it as a trend for the other ones. Like everything that's leading up to this, and then it's just a single bullet in the head or somewhere in the chest, and like something like that. And so I don't know if I'd say it's a low point or a high point, but I'll say that I love the climax of the film where they throw all this at you, but I just think it's funny. And I don't know if they're just doing it as a trope at this point for each film, but I think it's funny how it just ends like that. And like, we're done. This is the only way to do it, is a single bullet, kind of thing. And they move on.
For me, I like the interaction between Inspector Todd and Axel at the beginning of the movie. It is fucking hilarious where Todd is just like, shut the fuck up, Axel. Every time you think my dick itches. And he's saying, what the fuck is all these receipts? He just has all these receipts for all this shit. The Ferrari, a suit, everything. And he's just fucking pissing off the chief and just tells him, I'm deep undercover, but I'm gonna go deeper undercover. Like you won't even see me. And the inspector is just fucking heated the whole fucking time. I don't know. That scene just worked for me. I was dying the whole time.
James?
I like the scenes when Rosewood is just going intense at the end with Taggart. There's this, like, he pulls out the trench coat and he's like, I've always wanted to wear this. Oh, man. And then scene two where he pulls out literally a bazooka and he's like, what the fuck are you doing, man? It's just so, it's like, once again, I don't know if that was added. I feel like those parts were probably added because it's so over the top, but I thought it's funny. And I actually like the very last scene. This is random. It's like the comedy aspect of all, where the guy's like, this isn't really your house. He's like, of course it is. Then he leaves and the people actually show up and the dude's like, oh, he's like, who are you guys? He's like, who's that black guy? I don't know. He just got me.
He does a lot more impersonations than this. Like, he's the fucking building inspector and he tells them all to get the fuck out at the beginning, telling them the blueprints changed. Oh, man.
You in a square?
They want to live in a donut.
Yeah, you're gonna handle this, right? Just take care of it. I'm gonna take care of it. Just back up. We're good.
And again, when he pranks the other chief too in Beverly Hills, and he tells him he's Johnny Wishbone and he's a clairvoyant, and he's like guessing everyone's name, and the chief he gets pissed off saying, "Ain't nobody ever fucking heard of you."
Yeah.
Oh man.
We already kind of went over the ones I liked. I like the dangerous delivery that he did with, he's like talking about his whole family. He's like, what about them? What about them? And then
James threw the
really
water on his face too, just to make it look like he was sweating.
What do you tell her? Was fucked up right there when he almost sneezes.
Also, there's a pool scene where he's just like chilling in a pool, and Taggart and Billy are walking in, and he's like trying to entice them to kind of go swimming with them. He's like, yeah, come on in. It's nice and warm in here. And the guy falls in, Taggart falls in, and then he has to like get a clothing from upstairs. And it's like a full on like club suit with the sweater and everything like that. I just love that interaction between the three of them. It was great.
He was feeling himself too. He was like, I look good in this.
He was with it. Yeah, he was liked it.
Nobody else was though.
Well, let's go ahead and give a rating for this one. We'll start with James.
I give this one 3.5. I think it's just as good as the first one. It's a good continuation, and I recommend checking it out.
All right, Marco?
I actually give this one 4 stars. I like it slightly better than the first one. I think that, again, the villains really help elevate this movie, as well as the action and the violence.
Yeah. And Nabil?
I gave this 3.5 stars.
All right, and I gave this 3.5 as well. I actually like this one. I had a hard time picking between 1 and 2. I liked it just as much as the first one. And I watched them not back to back, but pretty close to back. So watched one day, and then like 2 days later, I watched the other one, and it was just I couldn't pick. They were both good.
Okay, so now we move on to Beverly Hills Cop 3.
So what brings you to California, Axel? Vacation?
I'm looking for a killer. One, please. We got some evidence that points to one in the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You mean Rufus Rabbit has gone berserko?
You got yourself in the middle of a federal investigation.
That guy killed a police officer. He killed a friend of mine.
You just keep him out of my face and out of my park.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a tremendous surprise for Mr. Duvall to have me standing right next to him right now. You know, right now I can feel his body tingling.
Sitting at a whopping 11% on Rotten Tomatoes. The plot for Beverly Hills Cop 3 goes, while investigating a car theft ring, Axel Foley comes across something much bigger than that. The same men who killed his boss are running a counterfeit money ring out of a theme park in Los Angeles. This one's directed by John Landis, who did The Blues Brothers in 1980, An American Werewolf in London in 1981, Trading Places in 1983, Three Amigos in 1986, and Coming to America in 1988. Written by Stephen E. DeSouza, who did 48 Hours in 1982, Commando in 1985, The Running Man in 1987, Die Hard in 1988, and Hudson Hawk in 1991. Yikes. Released on May 25th, 1994 in theaters. This one had a budget of $70 million and had a box office of $119.2 million. So not quite as successful as the previous two. The new characters for this film are Hector Elizondo as Detective John Flint, Timothy Carhart as Alice DeWald, Teresa Randall as Janice Perkins, Bronson Pinchot as Sergey, who returns after being absent in the second film because he was too busy doing his hit show in the 80s, Perfect Strangers. And a very brief cameo by the Star Wars creator himself, George Lucas, as the disappointed man.
Oh, what do you mean the ride's closed?
I'm with my girlfriend here, who's probably half my age in this movie. Come on now, I'm a pimp. So once again, we're going to go over our thoughts on this film, and I will start with our MC, BDJ. What are your thoughts of Beverly Hills Cop 3, man?
Did we ever mention? What do you guys think of the score, by the way, of all these films? The iconic song.
It's fucking badass.
It is, right?
Yeah.
It's so good.
Especially.
Even the other songs in the movies, both of the other ones we already talked about already. It's all of them. They're all great.
Until we get to this film.
First one also, yeah. The first one also has the famous song "The Heat Is On," which I had no idea.
So Beverly Hills Cop 3 is the one that is least liked by most people, right? It's okay. I mean, it came out too late. It came out 7 years after the last film. There was so many issues with, if you read up on how they made the film, it was constantly back and forth on script and what they wanted to do. Eddie Murphy was really depressed when he shot this. Some of the scenes he's actually not even in. There's like stand-ins for him instead because he had a bunch of box office failures leading up to this movie too. And he was trying to be... the movie is not that funny. There are parts where I still found myself laughing, but it's definitely toned. But that's an Eddie Murphy choice. He was trying to make it more serious because he thought because the character's older now, he wouldn't be wisecracking like he was in his 20s. He's in his 30s now. And it shows, man.
It didn't really feel like a rated R movie either, except for some foul language.
The language, yeah. The language is what does it because a lot of F-bombs. It feels very much like a mid-90s film. It looks kind of cheap overall, especially when you go from the Tony Scott movie to this. It's like, oh, what happened?
And it had a bigger budget.
Yeah, this one had, at this time, this is the biggest budget out of the three. And there's things missing from it. Like, I don't like that Taggart isn't in this film. They have John Flint as kind of basically his replacement at the time. And I think the villain's not bad, though, to tell you the truth. So I think that it's a decent villain. But overall, it was a disappointment compared to the first two.
Mikey, what about you? What did you think about Beverly Hills Cop 3?
A lot of the same of what James mentioned. I think there's a lot of pacing issues. Some of the scenes are like way too long. They needed to be cut drastically on some of them. Foley kind of seems like a different character completely compared to the other two. Some of the other side characters as well just didn't seem like the same person at all. Almost just like a new script almost. So this one just was okay and didn't match the other two for me at least at all.
Sounds about right. What about you, Nabil? What did you think of Beverly Hills Cop 3?
Yeah, definitely not as fun as the other two films. I really hated the theme park setting. There was a lot of 90s films that did that trope that thought it was cool.
It's Great America, though.
Yeah. I'm like, what are we doing here? And the whole idea of like, these guys are straight up shooting in the park, like everywhere. No one hears us. Like, it's a busy place too. I'm just like, even in the 90s, like, this is crazy. You can't be doing this. But yeah, the best part of the film still was Eddie Murphy. He was still funny with the lines that he did riff off of, and there was definitely some of those old tropes brought back, of course, in the other films. But like James said, it's 7 years later. I know he's supposed to be older, but you don't even bring back all the original cast, and Rosewood is not as fun as he was in the other two films, especially they did like nothing with the buildup of that conspiracy theory thing he was going through. In the last film, they kind of just said, "I'm leading this joint task force in this county." Like it
like
seems
it's
about a
technology.
character.
Look, it's the 90s.
Yeah, it's like exactly embracing technology and stuff. That does not
manage it now, basically.
Basically. So I don't know. I wasn't feeling the film in the same way at all.
I kind of echo the same as you guys. I remember the marketing a lot for this movie because I was like 25 when it came out. But
yeah, probably.
I was 11 when this movie came out. I remember specifically the big deal being that it was filmed at then Paramount's Great America, and it was so cool to see it in a movie because most places think Disneyland or Magic Mountain down south, and I was like, oh shit, it's my favorite theme park. Yes, Great America is my favorite theme park. Whatever. It was pretty cool. I remember seeing the posters and the trailers nonstop, and even despite all that, never got to see the movie. Never got to see the movies in this franchise up until now. Yeah, it's kind of weak, man. The plot is stupid. It's dumb. You think it'd be kind of cool it taking place at a theme park. It's not. It's really not. It's kind of like banking on the whole, like, there's like a secret society behind like Disneyland or something, where like they do nefarious things or whatever and stuff. That urban legend, and it's like the secret club or whatever where you can go underneath and behind the club. And I get it, but I mean, that shit hasn't aged too well, I guess, to a point. James, you mentioned briefly parts of the plot, specifically like the villains. What about the villains did you like or not like in this movie?
I think Alistair Wall, that character, he's probably one of the more standout characters out of this movie because there's not much to like in this movie, in my opinion. But Timothy Carhart has that look with that little fucking asshole look to him, where you immediately know he's the bad guy too, right? It's ridiculous too, right? Why is this guy out in Detroit doing all this shit? Then he came back. He's like, and also I'm the head of security here or some shit. And I work with the police.
So dumb.
It's just stupid. But he has the look of it. At least I will say that much. That's what I'm saying. Like, his character worked for me, as ridiculous as the plot is, right? So he's going to be the antagonist, and for me that does actually work for me.
He did the best he could. Yeah, I agree there.
Well, some of the choices were just bad though. Like, why did he personally go to LA? They could have used that as like a mystery plot point, right? Where like Foley doesn't know who it is, he has to figure it out. But no, like now
he already
knows.
Saw the guy in the beginning. So
yeah, he already saw him. He already knows who's going on. It's like
he was a witness to the guy. He's a police officer and a witness. Like he saw the actual guy. That's all he needed to fucking get the guy in jail. They just nope. Get that motherfucker.
Going off of that, the fact that it's in LA, did this work that it took place in Beverly Hills?
No, not really. It's just an excuse to get back. But I mean, also, I just gotta say, John Landis is a piece of shit. So it's probably his directing too. So
yeah,
I can't stand the fucking guy, dude. Ever since Twilight movie. So
yeah,
Three Amigos is a great film.
I know, but I guess it's such a shitty thing that have him and Eddie Murphy actually had a falling out because Eddie Murphy would not go to the court trial to try to defend him. He's like, no, I can't do that. So. It's a shock that he was the director they chose to do this, but I get it because Coming to America was a big hit. That was like one of Eddie Murphy's last big hits before this one, so I get it. But I can't stand the dude personally. So
yeah, he had already lost a lot of clout in Hollywood too because of the fiasco he had doing
the Vietnam scene, the Twilight Zone movie, where it resulted in the death of children and a fucking famous actor. But I mean, whatever.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg like refused to speak to him after that. He cut all ties. Going back to the plot, Nabil, does the whole theme park aspect, did that work for you? Was it believable that these private security guys could leave the park and actually have jurisdiction outside the fucking theme park? Did that work for you?
They're private security, so whatever. That's way too big of a private security to set up to be able to go across the country. Like, it's ridiculous as it is. I will say that's fine. They were definitely, you could tell they were trying to set it up in a maybe for the fact that it's a big budget. They were trying to do bigger set pieces inside the park, but you can tell that they were trying to contain it there because they wanted to have the action in those areas, and they kind of kept all the action there. But as far as like even with the plot moving forward, the weirdest thing to me of all of it that when I knew what was happening, but it just come to fruition, is that the FBI agent was dirty. And I was like, but why? Why is he dirty? Like, it would make more sense that Detective John Flint, the guy who was replacing fucking Taggart, would have been dirty. Yeah, but why is the FBI agent like even a part of this then?
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask why was it so obvious he was dirty.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, what was the purpose behind it? You know, it's like the choices didn't make any sense. He could have just, I don't know. I don't understand. There's a lot of half-baked things in here, and like James said, the only thing that really stood out was the main villain. You know, like he was just.
Yeah,
he was the okay part of it. I mean, he didn't have to go to Detroit, but he was fine as a villain, you know, a worthy adversary.
Yeah, and like, did he have to show up to do that? Couldn't his goons just have just done that? But it's like, no, I need people to know I'm the bad guy.
They had to find the motivation because he's the one that kills Inspector Todd, and that motivates Foley's. But yeah, it felt forced.
It's even funny that like Inspector Todd's there. Like, what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah, why?
Why are you here? Why are you here at the scene, dude?
Yeah.
Because the movie has to happen, that's why, right?
yeah, basically.
That's what he would say.
Moving on to characters. Mikey, what did you think of some of the returning characters? And also, how did you feel about the death of Inspector Todd and how it hit?
I mean, at that point, I mean, I hate to say it, but I didn't really feel that it was a good enough reason for Foley to go to Beverly Hills and find out what's happening. It didn't really seem... I guess the scene afterwards when that happens, it doesn't really seem like Foley is like disturbed by it as much that he needs to like go and find this killer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that happened and it's a person that he knew, but it didn't really seem, at least in those scenes, it didn't really seem like he cared that much about it. And just everything seems random about what happens in this movie. So it's hard to kind of piece together like the reasoning he's going about things and why things are happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think they could have used a lot of this stuff here. They had some decent ideas of what could happen. They just needed to kind of flesh them out a little bit more. I mean, if the guy is going to come to Detroit, bring the Beverly Hills Cops to Detroit, and it could still be Beverly Hills Cop, just not Foley.
Oh,
right?
do the switch?
Right.
Already
It would have been perfect, right? And they just have it in Detroit.
Who do you think you are?
Right? And
I know, right?
So that could have been really cool. And then they kind of see a piece of his life, and they kind of progress the characters even more.
Bring the Beverly Hills people there, yeah.
Yeah. So it just, everything seemed kind of random. It just didn't, for me at least, it didn't feel like the story and the characters were connected as much as the previous two films. And everybody just doesn't seem like the character they were before. So even Todd and Foley, because there's not, I mean, the comedy's different. Everything's different about this movie. And it just didn't feel great seeing, Todd die and, Foley's reaction to it. And then just everything that kind of happened afterwards.
Was it really necessary to have Janice Perkins in this movie? No offense to Teresa Randall, but her character in general.
No, they were just like, what if we have someone that's like tech savvy that believes in them?
Well, and there you go. They bring back that's what I was saying. The other two films, not a love interest, just somebody there. In this film, let's bring in a love interest. I'm like,
Just a cool person that will eventually be in Space Jam and Spawn. The Bad Boys franchise, but not a big deal.
Basically,
there's no need for it. No.
I do like that Sergey comes back. I actually laughed my ass off during his part.
He's funny.
Yeah.
But that's
I love how he pronounces Axel's name, by the way, too. He says Aquel. I'm going to give this to you. This is a gift. And I was like, why do I like this guy so goddamn much? So,
but even that scene where he's going through all the weapons and everything like that. I mean, you know that he's going through all these features of this gun. You know what's going to happen and later in the film. It like gives it all away.
Looks so fucking stupid.
Yeah, it looks crazy.
We spent so much time on it.
Away. Yeah, and it's like 10 minutes long. It could have been like just a little poster that says it has a CD player and not mention it at all, and then have it happen later on. It would have been way more impactful on how that scene came off.
Have Serge explained it in a funny way, even like.
Can we talk about George Lucas and that yellow sweatshirt though with the pig on it? I liked it a lot.
I hated
cameo there.
Yeah, I did. I jumped. I was like, "Holy shit, it's George Lucas!"
I was just like, "Oh, Beverly Hills Cop 3? What do you mean we can't get on the ride?"
In 5 years, the Star Wars comes back. Just letting you know.
He probably cooking it right there, man. Or 3 more years, he's like, I'm working on special editions. Just so you know.
Oh yeah, basically. No, 95. Yeah, 95, 96. So I know we've been ragging on this film a lot, with the exception of the villain. But were there any highlights of the film? Or I mean, I guess if there's another low point of the film, you can bring it up. But this is open for anyone.
The Ferris wheel scene where it broke down was fine, but it went on too long. That's another bad thing. Yeah. I was like,
I remember that the most of the trailer too.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the scene where the dude's hanging. I was like, that ain't him. I was like, that's a much bigger man doing that. But I was like, okay.
Not the same person at all. Nope. But I was like, that was a fine action scene, him rescuing them and everything. Like, I enjoyed it, but again, like the two kids taking forever to get there. I was like, they would have lost grip a long time ago. Those kids are dead. I'm like,
I like when Axel tells, he goes to the little celebration for Alice DeWald's little, inauguration or whatever the fuck is going on. And he's like,
oh, that's my favorite part.
He's like, they don't give out Oscars in prison, right?
I do love that because he knows who it is, and he just goes. I mean, he does it with all the other films too, but this is specifically, he'll go and just like really call him out and like put him to shame, and I think that's hilarious every single time.
It's like, you mad at me shooting your boyfriend? I was like, oh shit.
I do like kind of how his style sort of backfires in this, where it's what gets him to the point of getting framed because of his wild antics. They're able to manipulate it and say, "Oh no, he's the bad guy." See, and it adds a little different element, but I mean, it's poorly executed and in a movie that's not that strong. Anything else that stands out for you guys, Mikey? Anything else that stood out for you? Anything from the comedy or the improvisations?
It's a small scene or a small little act that happens, but I love when the guy is just like pulling one of the. They're doing counterfeit money, and they pull one of them out, and it's Axel's face on the money, and he's just like, ah! It was just so random. It just worked for me. It was just great.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a good chase scene in this one too. I do feel like most of them, and I'm trying to remember if there was one in this one here, but I feel like almost all of them
mean, the beginning part technically is a chase scene. Where
that's right. Yeah. But I feel like all the chase scenes were really well done. Like there are some unique ones. I mean, the second one has the one with like the cement truck, right? There's always a big truck or some awkward machinery that's happening. And I liked all of the ones I saw on all 4 of the movies. I thought all the chase scenes were really cool.
Yeah. No. I also like the ending battle scene where he does bring out the big gun, and each time he tries, something else happens. I thought those were kind of funny, that things that were coming up where, nothing came out, or some projectile, or the voice, and then suddenly just shoot. That I thought that was a funny bit.
Yeah,
but it happens with 6 different things. It could have just been like 1 or 2, and it would have been fine.
Long.
Yeah,
it's almost filler at that point. Like they're like, we gotta fill out this runtime.
I do also like how he actually gets pretty beat up in this one too. He gets shot twice. He gets slammed. Like everyone in this movie that's like helping him out for the most part, like they get pretty close to So with that being said, guys, let's go into our rating. Let's start with Mikey. What do you rate Beverly Hills Cop 3, and would you recommend it still?
I give this one a 2 stars. Unless you're a completionist, you don't really need to watch this one. Just watch the first 2 and then go to the new one, and you'll be just fine.
Mr. Nabil, what's your rating, sir?
Yeah, I also gave it 2 stars, and I'm of the same mind. You probably could just forget this film existed and watch the next one. You'll be fine.
And our MC BDJ, what do you rate this film?
I gave this one 2 as well. I mean, I think it's still worth a watch if you're going to go through them all, because they do somewhat mention it in the next one, but yeah, that's about it.
I give it 2 stars also.
Ooh,
yeah. Yeah, I think it's still watchable, I think, to a point. Like, you don't really have to, but it does have some saving grace here and there, but it's, definitely the worst one in the original 3.
So next we'll go on to our last film, Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F.
Axel Foley is back. Back where he doesn't belong.
What the hell? This is you. Nah, man, that's not me. That's that actor Wesley Snipes.
This isn't my first time in Beverly Hills.
I saw that.
Did you ever read your own file? Various shootouts, evading the police.
I've been hearing Axel Foley's story since the academy.
And what the hell you think you're doing? What the hell you think you're doing? Hey, get over!
This is very embarrassing.
Yeah, well, you should have thought of that before your little joyride back there.
So this film is sitting at a 66% Rotten Tomato score. This stars Axel Foley, who returns to Beverly Hills after his daughter's life is threatened and works with old pals John Taggart and Billy Rosewood to uncover a conspiracy. This was directed by first-time director Mark Malloy and written by Will Beal, who did Gangster Squad, Aquaman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League, as well as the most recent film, Bad Boys, Ride or Die. It was also written by Tom Gormican, who did That Awkward Moment in 2014 and The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, as well as Kevin Itten, who also helped with The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. This film was released on Netflix on July 3rd of this year with a $150 million budget. Huge.
Hey, you want Eddie Murphy back? It costs money, baby.
Gotta pay. This also stars some new characters, as well. Of course, we've got the older characters returning, but new characters: Joseph Gordon-Levitt, JGL, as Detective Bobby Abbott, Taylor Page as Jane Saunders, John Ashton, Chief John Taggart now, who returned from this film after taking his little hiatus of retirement in the 3rd film, and Kevin Bacon as Captain Cade Grant. Let's talk a little bit about the plot of this film. I'm going to start with you, Marco. What did you think about this movie? Any likes, any dislikes? What stood out for you?
I actually really enjoyed it, man. I was kind of afraid going into this one because there's a lot of, sequels, requels, what have you, about movies from the past. But this one, actually, it worked pretty well. I think Axel having a daughter sort of came out of left field for me, but it kind of makes more sense with James mentioning on the pod that he was married, I guess, in the first 2 movies. But it was still like a simple plot for the most part. You like the previous movies, you kind of see things coming like a mile away. I mean, they they show their cards, right at the beginning with Kevin Bacon being surrounded by like the goons and stuff. So
it's pretty obvious.
Having like a big name like Kevin Bacon, it's like, I wonder who the bad guy is going to be, guys.
I was like, John Ashton, you son of a bitch.
That being said, it was cool that they paid a lot of homage to the original. There was even like the beginning has almost the same intro. You have like The Heat Is On playing. You have like some like the similar. It's not at the beginning in this movie, but it's sort of towards the middle where they're like, I think in a snowplow machine or something, and like they're crashing. It's reminiscent of the crash with the truck in the first movie too, and they're just destroying fucking cars everywhere. So it worked for the most part. It had some new elements where some of the antics that actually don't work. It's the like people are so like immune to it. And it's like, fuck are you doing, dude? And you think that's gonna work for you? Like, so I kind of like that.
Yeah. What about you, Mikey? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I like this one. I feel like if I had watched these original movies back in the 80s, that this movie would hit nostalgia to the max. They did a really good job kind of bringing everything back to the same formula the first two had. So I really enjoyed this one. They have a little bit of character development with Foley, especially with his daughter coming into play and kind of the family element where he's kind of a father and, they got to have kind of hash things out a little bit. And I liked that. It was also a good reason for him to go back to Beverly Hills. It kind of seemed more believable than some of the other ones. Even the second one, I mean, it's kind of loose on why he goes back. I feel like Murphy kind of hits this one out of the park again in terms of like just his acting. I thought he was back to his original form. I feel like he was having fun playing the role again, and he just felt like he was just back in his old boots again. He just slapped them on and he just went and made another, really good movie.
Yeah. What about you, James?
Yeah, I agree. I had fun with this one. It's a return to form after the disastrous third film. So it's nice to see Eddie Murphy really seemed involved in this one. And this one went through a ton of development hell too. They were almost going to do a series. They did this. Original directors were the guys that did the Bad Boy films last two, and they dropped out of this because they were filming Batgirl. Whoops. And then, so with a first time director too, it's pretty impressive that they were able to do this. It's not perfect. There's a new character that I absolutely fucking hated. And
JGL. Yeah, I understand. JGL.
And while I actually thought it was quite funny too, there's quite a lot of times I was actually laughing. And I think Eddie Murphy's, it's nice to see him I feel like this is pretty successful overall. So
yeah, I totally agree. I think that this film is a solid sequel to Beverly Hills Cop 2. Just jumping off right off of that, I think it works. All the nostalgia comes in. The music is really well integrated like they did in the first two films. Throughout the whole film, you've got a good soundtrack going on of mix of 80s and modern music. They even do this take on, is it Lil Nas X, I think?
Yeah, he does the new theme song.
Of the theme song, and it, for what it is, it works, so they kind of bring some life into the music inside the film, which is fun. And yeah, Eddie Murphy definitely looks like he's having a great time and definitely can hold his own self, I guess. He held up to the same standard he did in the first two films and have a good time. So I enjoy that quite a bit. So going back to you, Mikey, since you kind of mentioned it at first about Eddie Murphy saying that he still got it, what were your thoughts on his character and his 20-year hiatus from the character now kind of coming back to form? Do you think it does really fit well with it, or do you think he's done something a little bit new?
Well, I mean, you can tell he's the same character now that he was in the first one. So, he brings that back. He has that there, but he has to be a little bit more mature as well, because it has been a time jump a little bit, as well as I kind of mentioned before. He's a dad or a father now, and I think that actually progresses him and his relationship with the daughter. While it's not the perfect relationship, it's actually very rocky. It brings an element to Foley that we didn't see before. So you can kind of see that he's kind of emotional about some of the stuff that's happened. They don't really go super far into like why he's been gone this long, but I mean, you can tell that there's some history there. He's trying to protect her from some of the things that happened in the past in Detroit. So they had to kind of send him off, and he just never really had a chance to kind of keep up with them on his side. So, and you can tell in a lot of the scenes that, he's kind of like, man, I kind of messed up. Even though when they're talking, he's not saying, hey, I messed up. He's saying, hey, you could have called me, or it's halfway your fault too. So there's a bigger dynamic there that wasn't in any of the other films. And then his kind of relationship with some of the characters that are returning and some of the new characters, it's just kind of progressed his character a lot more than I was expecting to. I just expected this movie to be a little bit more straightforward, especially with the returning character. I thought they would just be the same people, and it brought another dynamic that I was very surprised about.
Yeah, and speaking about the returning characters, James, what did you think about how Taggart and Rosewood coming back into this film, how they were actually portrayed in this film, and how their characters kind of developed from before compared to before?
I thought Taggart was really good. I liked his little. You always think he pulled a Lando on Eddie Murphy in the beginning, where you think, "Oh my God, is he going to punch him? What's going on here?"
Yeah,
it was a little throwback to slugging him in the first movie, but they're still really close. I like that their relationship has stayed up. And with Rosewood, he's not in the movie as much as Taggart. He's really just once again beginning and end, because he's captured and he's getting tortured and all this stuff, and they still all have really good chemistry together. So I really like that still, and it was nice to see like I said, their evolution from the first film to this film it's drastic, right? It actually shows that the time has passed. It sounds like they've stayed friends and stuff like that. Even like Jane calls Taggart like Uncle John at one point. So obviously she, it's implying that they had some kind of relationship or something. So it's kind of cool.
And what about you, Marco? Any thoughts on Jane being introduced? I know Mikey kind of spoke a little bit about her and the plot point of him having to go back to Beverly Hills for it. But what did you think about Jane just as a character in general? Do you think she added anything to this movie?
Yeah, I think she challenged Axel at every given moment. She challenged who he was. She pretty much brought to light that in the previous movies, he's never really admitted to any wrongdoing or mistakes. And she's not afraid to point that out to him and to make him face that. And I like that. It also makes this storyline slightly more personal for Axel. I mean, all the other movies have been, it's his friend or his, somebody he's worked with that's his friend. But this time it's his family that's involved in this. So it's like really close to the chest. I like that she has the dynamic that she's a defense attorney and he is, law enforcement, and they're kind of supposed to be at odds, and it brings that dynamic to it. I mean, it's an old trope that they used before in other films, but I think it works for this, and it adds like a new element to the comedy, because she's always able to she's his daughter, so she's able to quit back. I like how she is actually better at riffing in this movie than he is. Like and that she at first like fucks with him and tries to like debunk his story, and he's like looking at her like, what are you doing? Only for her to like come back and be like, here, let me show you how it's done. So I like that.
Well, she's kind of like teaching him the old, like, that's the old school. This is not how we do things now, and
yeah,
it's a better way to do
it.
What
a legacy sequel move, right? Well, you guys can't do that. Ghostbusters don't exist. Oh, wait, wrong movie. Sorry. I got to bring it up though, guys. I thought she was a fucking terrible actress, though. I've never seen someone just read her lines like that.
She was a little monotone.
She looks familiar.
I don't know. What was your experience watching these films? Why were you not coming back, Dad? Every time I was like, is that the first take? I was like, oh my fucking God, dude! I had a feeling they wanted like Kiki Palmer or something for this role, and then she somehow got the same role. The whole time I was like,
kind of makes
Kiki
sense.
Palmer would have fucking murdered this role, dude.
Yeah.
But man, I had an issue with her. Just not character wise, I didn't care, but the actress herself.
Yeah.
God damn! Like, did she know someone on the set or something? Or I thought at first I was like, maybe I'll get used to it. By the end, I said, no, she's got the same tone the whole movie. Even when they're getting shot at in the streets, like, are you okay? I'm fine.
Well, they might have wanted somebody a little bit more serious though for this one, because that's kind of like the emotional.
Oh no, you can do that,
right?
and still be a good actress.
No, I agree with you though. It wasn't the greatest performance or anything,
part of this movie for me.
They wouldn't want like a comedian or anything doing it, in my opinion.
I will agree with to that point to what James is saying, is that compared to all the other actors around her, I mean, we've got
killing it. Everyone else killing it. We get to her, and I'm like, ooh,
her performance kind of stands out in a bad way because of it, for sure. And speaking about big name actors that are on here, we brought up Kevin Bacon as Captain Cade Grant. He's a villain here. I mean, I don't know. Did we not see that coming a mile away? I think Eddie Murphy called it out.
No. He was like, this guy's wearing $1,000 shoes.
Yeah, basically.
He said cops used to hide the fact that they're corrupt, not so blatant like this.
Right.
I did like that he actually points out how obvious he is at being the villain. Like, oh yeah, he already knew right when he met him.
Got
Taggart's
the Rolex watch.
Yeah, Taggart's like defending him the whole time, and he's like, "No, like it's very obvious."
Especially when he's like, "No, I know the guy. He would have never done it." Remember, he's talking about the cop, and I was like, "That means he did it then."
Yeah,
that means he's bad. So,
do you think that? Just to ask you, James, do you think that could it have been anybody, or did you like the fact that Kevin Bacon was actually in this film?
I mean, it's fine. All 4 movies, it's pretty obvious who the bad guy is, right? So it's not like this was a new thing to us. It was fine, and I mean Kevin Bacon's a really good actor, so almost too good for this series, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I think he does kind of stand out a little bit, but I mean he looks good doing it, so can't hate him.
Yes, yeah, I was like, good for you, Kevin Bacon.
Yeah,
good for you.
And I mean, there was another character that I enjoyed seeing again. We had Serge.
You still can't say his name, huh?
Yeah, no, he comes back and it's fun.
Yeah, I like that he came back because it seems like him and Eddie Murphy can riff off each other really well.
Yeah,
I think that works. And I mean, the other character is probably JGL, and he's one of those characters where like they just wanted a younger cop, I guess, involved. Because let's face it, Taggart and Rosewood are looking a little,
just a little bit.
That's how Rosewood. I said, "Damn, Rosewood, I don't know. Yeah, I know you got some work done, but goddamn, boy, you looking old. Fuck, you look older than Taggart." So
you're the chief. What's going on, Rosewood?
And it was kind of funny with his whole like, oh, I was a helicopter pilot, and then fuck, is that Shooter McGavin for fucking Happy Gilmore?
I thought he was gonna say he was Shooter McGavin. I was like,
I don't think they can, but I was like, they're implying he's the same character, and I'm assuming because I was like, wait, I was like, what the fuck?
They're like, there's a lady in there.
Because I mean, Netflix is about to make Happy Gilmore 2. I'm like, is this a connected universe? Oh my god!
Oh, dude,
so
awesome.
Yeah,
I like.
I did like one thing I do want to bring up. JGL does bring up like his like 82 or 87 and then 84 87 and then the disaster 94. This is a little like stabbing like the third movie. I'm like, there you go. So
but I like Abbott too when they're in that helicopter because like Eddie Murphy is just like going on doing his thing, like just doing the motor mouth, like going crazy. And he's just like,
not to mention, he brings it up too. He's like, he did a little bit better than what I would have done, but way worse than a real pilot would have done.
He fucking tells him, I crashed the helicopter, and he ends up crashing this one.
Yeah.
No, I like that. I like Abbott. I mean, JGL does, as good as he does with what he's got, but I think it shines more when Stargate's in the scene and he's like making Axel uncomfortable, saying like, "Oh, I'm feeling like some sexual tension between your daughter and this guy."
Well, unfortunately, we never see that because him and Jane Saunders have no chemistry together.
No,
yeah,
it is fucking non-existent. They're trying to bring up that they had a history, and I'm like, doesn't seem like the suit did everything.
But I think that made it funnier for me. Yeah, that made it funnier for me. That scene is, I was like, dude, what tea leaves are you reading? Because I don't see it. But
I'd love to see what really happened. This must have been the most boring relationship ever. Well, where do you want to go? I don't know.
That's why it didn't work out.
Okay, I guess we'll just chill here, I guess.
Yeah, they had the kind of
what? Why do you remind me of my dad?
When that interaction with Serge, and then after that, like they do nothing with that relationship.
They try to do something like in the mansion. I was like, this is so forced. I'm like, stop.
He's 10 years older than her.
I don't like sand.
Yeah. So, any other characters that stood out, or anybody else that you've Well, actually, let me ask you this, Mikey. I'm going to go to you. What did you think about the plot as a whole? Like, did you feel that this kind of tied in with a better mix of action and comedy compared to maybe the last one where they're trying to be a little bit more serious, or the second one where they had the more intense action scenes?
Yeah, I thought there was a good mix. The comedy was still there, but the action was still there as well. They had 2 chase scenes in this one. I was like, oh man, they're stepping their game up. But I mean, they did a lot with the story as well. More so, in my opinion, than some of the previous ones. I mean, especially with the villain. Like, I didn't like any of the villains previously. Even, I mean, yes, they did more in the third one, but I feel like they used Kevin Bacon and his villainy. They used it pretty well. Yes, you knew he was the villain, but there was a lot of scenes with the villain this time, which they were lacking stuff beforehand. So they really kind of fleshed out the villain this time a little bit more than they did in the past. And I kind of liked that. And their scenes together were really good. Murphy's and Bacon's scenes, like the interrogation room, stuff like that. But they were really nice.
We kind of mentioned that all the previous films have like a no name, basically, or someone who's been in small roles. And I think they sort of like addressed that in this one. It's like, well, let's get a big name for the villain too, and just kind of like have him, equally matched. And I think that worked.
I liked it a lot.
Marco, what about to that point? Like, was there something that really stood out as far as a highlight of the scenes in the film, or maybe something that you're like, this could have been done better?
I would say I agree with James. Just the romance between Abbott and the daughter, I think, could have been better. It did feel a bit forced. It didn't matter whether they had a relationship. The movie could have gone the whole time without them being a couple or having a past. It wouldn't have made a difference to the plot. Like, it's like, what's the point? It was done for comedic relief, probably, but I'd say as far as that's concerned, that part didn't really work. It only works briefly in the mansion just because Sergei's there and he brings light to that and life. But that outside of that, it just doesn't work. It's just like, okay. I think Abbott's past and him riffing with Eddie Murphy worked a lot better, so they could have like leaned in more with that. I wish would have had more of like the helicopter banter that they had, because I felt like that worked. But really, if there's a scene that really sticks out for me that's good in this movie, it's the whole freaking snowplow thing where they're just freaking destroying everything, and the way they try to get the attention from the other cops is they just fucking slam into that car, and then they're just being chased by everyone, and they're trying so hard like not to hit the cars, and they just end up fucking all of them up. It was just a nice homage and also felt fresh at the same time.
Yeah, I'd say that opening scene was a really solid opening action scene from the series. And the fact that seeing like Eddie Murphy's character like be so nervous as he's going through, he's like, oh, this is maybe I went a little over my head with this part too. But it's still like, but we're committing to the bit. We're going to keep going. Like, it was funny to watch that whole scene play out.
Yeah.
And James, can I ask, what did you think about this film being online? Like, do you think it deserved, I mean, for a $150 million budget, do you think it deserved to be in the theaters, or do you think it's where it needed to be? It was fine for streaming.
I'm like 50-50 on it. I think would it have done as well in theaters is what you're probably asking too, maybe?
Yeah, especially for the summer.
Maybe. I think word of mouth would have brought this one pretty far out, and I think the Beverly Hills Cop, maybe there's a little gas left in the tank here, I don't know if this is the last time we're going to see this. So, yeah, I would have liked to see it open in theaters, and, unfortunately we had to see it at home, but it still worked for the most part. So,
yeah, Mikey, I feel like you maybe want to add anything to that, or do you think that it's worthy of just staying streaming?
I think it would have been done well in the theaters. I mean, it has a little bit of everything, right? There's some action comedy, there's a decent plot, good actors throughout, there's some drama in it. And for a 2-hour movie, I thought it was paced pretty well. There's always something going on the screen. And like James was saying, I think word of mouth would have been pretty good for this movie. I think this would have done well in the theater.
Well, I guess we'll never know because it's not going to show up in the theaters. Nope. All right, so let's go into our ratings for this film. I'm going to start with you, Marco. What would you give this 1 out of 5 stars?
I give this one a 3 stars. Still really good. Not necessarily as good as probably the first 2 films, but definitely a lot better than the third one.
And James, how about you?
I give this one 3.5 stars. I think it's pretty solid. It's reminiscent of the first 2 to me, and worth a watch.
And Mikey?
I also gave this 3.5 stars, although I will say that this 3.5 was closer to a 3, whereas the other 3.5s for the 1 and 2 were closer to a 4. So, but yeah, it's definitely a good movie. Definitely go watch it. If you've seen the other ones, you definitely should go out and watch this one.
I also gave it 3.5 stars, and I think it's new and also kind of a refreshing take to this series, and it was a very worthy sequel.
Nice. So that is our marathon. I do want to do a little end cap here with you guys. So how was your experience, and Mikey and Marco, then, really, with watching these 4 films? Did this turn you guys into fans?
Yeah, I like the series a lot, actually, way more than I thought I would. As I was saying before, I didn't really watch a lot of movies from this era, just old movies in general I just haven't watched. So I'm still kind of new to 80s films in general and that kind of stuff. And this movie actually I haven't really watched a lot of Eddie Murphy stuff. So I kind of wanted to go back and watch some of his older films now. So yeah, I really liked what I saw, and I would definitely recommend if you haven't seen these to give them a chance. They're really good.
I'm with Mikey on this. I'm a fan. I really enjoyed it. I didn't know really what to expect, especially these movies being, or at least the original run being so old. I'm like, is this going to hold up? And I'd say for the most part it does. And now that we have like a modern sequel to it, I think it makes the experience that much better. I would recommend it. I think Eddie Murphy is still fire, man. He's the OG.
Let's rank them then. Nabil, what's your ranking of the 4 films, just quickly? Worst to best.
Worst to best. Beverly Hills Cop 3, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Beverly Hills, Axel Foley, Beverly Hills Cop.
Mikey?
3, 4, 1, 2.
Okay. Marco?
3, Foley, 1, 2.
Nice. Yeah, mine's 3, Shrek 2. I'm sorry. God, I'm all over the place again, boys. Fuck. Donkey. Mine would be 3, 1, Axel Foley, then 2, I think is how I would look at it. Although those top 3 are pretty close, like I said. So yeah, it's really just that. And then there's a bunch of space and then 3. So
yeah, I'd say Foley and 1 could switch for me too.
Yeah. All right. So that's the end of the podcast. We appreciate you all for tuning in. Marco, let them know how they can reach us.
You can listen and follow us on your preferred podcast platform. We're everywhere. For a convenient link to all our social media channels, visit linktree/moviepalspod. That's linktr.ee/moviepalspod. And remember, smash that subscribe button and you'll never miss an episode in this town or the next.
And catch us on TikTok for sneak peeks of upcoming episodes and more exciting movie content. Follow us at Movie Pals Pod.
Make sure to tune in for our next episode, podcast episode number 179, where we will be doing a double feature with reviews of Twister and Tweesters.
Thank you, Nabil. Until next time, this is James,
Marco,
Nabil,
and Mikey.
Have a good one.